Madam President, someday I'll write a book, maybe. And one of the topics that I've thought of, because I spent most of my adult life in the world of legislating, is what motivates or inspires the idea to introduce a bill that might one day become a law. I think many people would be surprised at what the motivation could be. I've, for example, on health issues, have found members who were inspired because of the knowledge of someone in their family or friend who went through a challenge with a medical condition and asked them if they would help in the field of research. Of course, many bills come to us from constituents who contact us and have problems or challenges, and we realize the only real recourse is a change in the law. And that's the case with the bill that I'm introducing today. It was 20 years ago that we had a phone call in my office in Chicago. And a woman who was the director of a music program in the city of Chicago asked for some help. The program is known as the Merit Music Program. And a very kind lady left some money to the program with the instruction that it should be used to teach students, low-income family students in public schools, how to play a musical instrument and to actually buy the instrument for them. It's been spectacularly successful. And of course, we learn that many students, if they take up music, turn out to be not only musicians, but very good students. So the Merit Music Program has quite a history. Well, they called and told us 20 years ago that they had an amazing young woman who was part of the Merit Music Program, who had started playing the piano at the age of 12 and was nothing short of a phenomenon. She had applied for music schools that she might attend, and the major schools, music schools like Juilliard and Manhattan Conservatory of Music, had expressed an interest. They'd run into a problem, though, because when she filled out the form, application form, they asked for her citizenship status. And she said, unfortunately, that she didn't know what it was. And her mother said, why don't we call Senator Durbin's office? And that's how we got into the picture. Her name was Teresa Lee. Teresa Lee was Korean, American. She was brought to the United States on a visitor's visa at a very early age, the age of 2, to Chicago. And when the visa expired, no effort was made to renew it or to file any papers with the federal government. So she was a classic case of the undocumented alien. Her parents, some of whom were here legally, and her siblings, some of whom were citizens, did not spare her the problem that she faced in determining her own status, and that's why they called us. Well, we learned that even though she was 17 or 18 at the time and had been in the United States all of her life that she could remember, she did not have legal status, and the law said that Teresa Lee, at the age of 17, had to leave the United States for 10 years and apply to come back in legally. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. My staff told me that they didn't know what to tell her to do. And I soon realized the only thing to do was to change the law and to give to young people brought here as infants and toddlers and babies and young kids a chance to become legal in America. That's why 20 years ago, I introduced a bill called the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act was for Teresa Lee. Now, I'm going to interject here part of the story because I always forget to tell the happy ending. Teresa Lee ended up applying to music school in New York. She was accepted, and she went to school because of the kindness of several families in Chicago who were so impressed with her talent. She finished the 4 years of education at that music school, was so good that she played in Carnegie Hall, and then married a American-born jazz musician in New York. She is now the proud mother of 3 children. She is a music teacher herself and an American citizen by virtue of her marriage to the other musician. Teresa was the first dreamer, but there were many just like her who didn't have as much luck. They are still in a suspended animation status when it comes to immigration and citizenship. So for 20 years on the floor of the United States Senate, I have introduced this bill and told the stories of the dreamers. I think I've gotten through to a number of people because the word dreamer now really signifies more this citizenship status than anything else. I joke that when I first started this mission, if you would have asked people who were the dreamers, older folks would have said, why, that's a British rock group, a fellow named Freddie, who's a lead singer. But today, when you mention the word dreamers, people automatically think of these young people and their situation in the United States, which to this day, because of our failure to pass the DREAM Act, is still unresolved. They came to the United States as kids. They're American in every way. They went to our schools and they stood up every morning and put their hand over their heart, pledged allegiance to that flag, the only flag they've ever known. They thought they were just like the kids next to them. And then one day, the parents sat down and told them the reality. They go to school with our kids. We see them in church. We know that they stand by the beds of our neighbors and relatives who are fighting COVID-19. We know that they are injecting life-saving vaccines in the arms of our parents and loved ones, and they are giving back to America as teachers, nurses, engineers, and soldiers. But they are not citizens of the United States. Today, I will once again reintroduce the DREAM Act with Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, as my co-sponsor. I want to thank him for doing this and making it a bipartisan effort. We have a long history of working together, though we disagree on many things. But on this issue, we believe that Congress has an obligation to fix our broken immigration system. It was, as I mentioned, many years ago that I introduced the bill, but it was 11 years ago that Republican Senator Dick Lugar of Indiana, on a bipartisan basis, agreed to call on President Obama and ask him to do what he could do to protect these young people from deportation. President Obama created the DACA program. DACA program meant that these young people came forward, identified themselves, paid a substantial fee, went through a criminal background check and a national security check, and if approved, were given a 2-year renewable protection from deportation and a 2-year renewable right to work. More than 800,000 of these dreamers came forward and received the protection of DACA. It unleashed their full potential. I can tell you over and over and over again, they will say to me, DACA changed my life. I finally thought I had a chance to be part of America. And so they became soldiers and teachers and business owners and everything imaginable. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, more than 200,000 DACA recipients are essential infrastructure workers. That's not my term. That's the definition of the Department of Homeland Security under President Donald Trump. Among these essential workers are 41,700 DACA recipients in the healthcare industry, doctors, intensive care nurses, paramedics, respiratory therapists, all of them in a suspended immigration status because the DREAM Act is still a bill and not a law. On September 5th, 2017, former President Trump repealed DACA. Hundreds of thousands of these dreamers faced losing their work permits and being deported. Last summer, the Supreme Court rejected President Trump's effort to end deportation protection for dreamers. In an opinion amazing opinion by Chief Justice John Roberts, the court held that President Trump's attempt to rescind deferred action for childhood arrivals, known as DACA, was, quote, arbitrary and capricious. In one of his first official acts, I can't thank him enough, President Biden signed an executive order on January 20th to restore DACA. I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for making DACA one of his highest priorities. Without DACA, hundreds of thousands of talented young people who have grown up in our country cannot continue their work and are at risk of deportation to countries they barely remember, if they remember at all. But the resumption of DACA is just the first step toward justice for dreamers. Only legislation by Congress can provide a path to citizenship for dreamers. We know now that there's still efforts underway to eliminate DACA protection in the courts of America. A recent case in Texas is a reminder that a law has to pass. I'm honored that I'll have a chance to serve as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee in this new Congress. As the child of an immigrant, I never dreamed that I would have this opportunity to lead the committee in the Senate that writes our nation's immigration laws. To all of the dreamers out there, let me tell you this. Passing the DREAM Act is still my highest legislative priority. There was a fellow named Jack Valenti who worked for LBJ years ago, and he used to say, every good speech has 6 words in it. And so he told me those words, and they are these: let me tell you a story. So I have come to the floor of the United States Senate to tell the story of the Dreamers 128 times. Today, I want to tell you about Ana Cueva. Born in Mexico, came to the United States when she was 5 years old. She grew up in Utah. What a student. President of the National Honor Society at her high school, graduated in the top 10% of her class, and volunteered at local hospitals in her junior and senior years. Anna's dream, she wanted to become a nurse. Anna wrote me a letter, and here's what she said about her dream. My mom became very sick. She required emergency surgery for a brain tumor. It was 1 year after arriving in the United States, so her English was very limited. After her recovery, she's always said that nurses who cared for her were kind and patient. Even though they couldn't communicate very well, they touched her very deeply. Anna said, I want to do for others what these nurses did for my mom. Driven by that commitment, Anna earned an associate's degree and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing at Utah Valley University. Thanks to DACA, she became an ICU registered nurse. Most of her nursing career has been in her home state of Utah, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, she's become a travel nurse and has worked in California, Massachusetts, Idaho, and Texas. Here's what Anna said about the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, quote, my soul aches. I have seen more people die in the past year than my 5 years before as a nurse. I've held more hands as people passed away alone and cried with families through FaceTime and on the phone. I became numb for a short while, but as I find myself again, I remembered why I do what I do. I want to thank Anna for her service on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. She is a health hero. She is an immigrant health hero. She is the face of DACA. She's put her life at risk and her family at risk to protect others. She should not also have to worry about whether she's going to be deported and her family ripped apart. So some people think we'd be a stronger country if Ana Cueva would leave. Go back to Mexico. You're not one of us. We've got numbers of immigrants we can accept each year, and you're not in that number. You're illegal. You're undocumented. What a loss that would be if we lose Anna and people like her in the middle of a pandemic. What would we be thinking? So the fight is on for Anna and for hundreds of thousands just like her who simply want a chance to earn their way to legal status and citizenship in the United States of America. It would be a tragedy for us to turn away these brave, talented, and determined professionals in the midst of this pandemic. So we have to get to work. In the Judiciary Committee and on the floor of the Senate, this is the year. This is the time when we can come together and make a difference in the future of America. To Anna, we need you. We want you. We want to make you part of the future of this country because you're such an important part of America today. This DREAM Act means a lot to me. We need to make it the law. I yield the floor.